I'm tired of not talking about this. I'm tired of living with this shame, and I'm tired of meeting so many other survivors who also live with this shame.
Only a monster hits a 5-year-old kid or abuses an 11-year-old kid sexually.
I remember you got done reading the whole thing and you just cried.
That is Portland's Heidi Yewman and her husband Dave reflecting on Heidi's new memoir titled Dumb Girl, a journey from childhood abuse to gun control advocacy. It's the story of the abuse Heidi suffered as a child and teenager at the hands of her father and one of her older brothers, something she's talking about for the first time. And it's the story of how she found her confidence, resilience, and power where she least expected. Thanks for joining us, and welcome to a very special Talk About It. I'm David Molko. Over the next half hour, you'll hear how leaning into her trauma and her fears has helped Heidi heal. We'll take you to her book launch at PALS, where she shares a poignant message for other survivors. And later, we'll be joined by an expert panel where we'll talk about breaking the cycle, preventing violence and abuse when it comes to young people today, and how you can help empower those you care about the most. But first, to the story that brought us here, and a warning: it deals with abuse and may not be appropriate for all audiences. Here's how Heidi Yewman found a path toward healing, not only for herself, but for others.
Don't be a dumb girl. That's what I was repeatedly told by my dad, my brothers, and even my mom.
Though Heidi Yewman's childhood scars run much deeper than being called dumb, deeper than having her father tape failure at the age of 11 all over her bedroom wall.
Now, all your friends will see how stupid you are. It was living inside of me, and I needed to get it out, so I just started writing the stories. My name is Heidi Yewman. I'm a gun violence prevention advocate, documentary filmmaker, and a survivor.
A survivor of prolonged emotional and physical abuse at the hands of the person she trusted the most.
And one of my biggest cheerleaders. And at the same time, he was my biggest tormentor.
Who punched his only daughter in the nose as she was doing her kindergarten homework.
You can't figure it out, so you automatically think, it's me, I'm the problem.
And a survivor of years-long sexual abuse as a child and teenager by one of her older brothers.
I think we live in a society that is not okay talking about these things.
What do you think people don't understand about childhood abuse that you wish they knew?
I think they don't understand the shame.
Silence those cell phones. Thank you.
It feels very not real. Hi. I'm so glad you're here.
Because Heidi is now sharing her life story with the world.
Part of me still feels like that dumb girl that doesn't deserve this.
And this evening at PALS,
I'm tired of not talking about this. I'm tired of living with this shame.
Is the launch of her memoir.
You will be brave. You will be smart. You will be kind. You will be seen. You will be important. You will be safe. And you will be loved.
Turning toward her trauma, not only by writing and talking about it.
It's so nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. We watched a community.
But in her work around preventing gun violence, confronting bullies, Heidi says, who remind her of her father.
And it's through that work that I found my voice, my confidence, and my power. For those who are struggling and want help, to be able to know that through my story that it can be okay.
At Washington Park, we meet Heidi's husband, Dave.
Can we do that again?
Her solid rock through it all, she says.
He's incredible. It's hard to not be emotional.
The couple just celebrated their 35th anniversary, though it's clear the darkest memories live just below the surface.
And suddenly I hear this, no, from the bedroom. So I go, she's having a nightmare. And I was like, like the pain for her. I didn't know.
Holding me in those moments, waiting for it to subside, telling me I'm okay.
And their biggest victory, Heidi says, raising 2 healthy children, both now flourishing adults.
Basically, I did all the things I wish had been done to me, right?
and whether she's standing up for others.
I have a voice, I have a story, I matter, and our traumas matter. That's what's shaped us.
Or savoring the safety she never knew growing up.
This is cool. I really hope this helps people.
Heidi is certain that even though she knows she will, to some extent, always live with the questions and the shame.
This is just an internal scar that I'll always have.
Talking about her path out of childhood trauma is her way to find a sense of purpose and perhaps eventually peace.
Because that's what breaks the shame, and that's what breaks the cycle. When we live in shame, then we can't prosper and we can't thrive. And so we've got to talk about it.
Yes, we do. By the way, if you or someone you know, like Heidi, is a survivor of sexual assault, help is available 24/7. Just call the National Sexual Assault Hotline at 800-656-4673. That's 656-HOPE. And if you're in crisis, there's another option, the National Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. That number is 988. Okay, let's head back to Powell's Books now to hear more from my conversation with Heidi. And one question I had, why it was important for her to write in great detail about the abuse she suffered at her brother's hands. Take a listen.
It was really hard to write about that because in order to write it well, I had to re-experience it. And it was really, people avoid reliving the things that are hard. When I came out of my childhood, I was so hungry for books and to learn about other people's experiences and to figure out that what I had experienced isn't so, my reaction wasn't bad, it was normal, and the things I was experiencing was normal. And so I wanted other people to see that and see that when you're being sexually abused by a family member when you're young, going out of your body and out of your mind and floating, that's such a normal response.
The disassociation.
The disassociation, yeah, absolutely. And so I didn't want to sort of do the chapter where I said, and then we went into the bedroom and then the door closed. I wanted to bring the reader along with me. And I know that some readers that's hard to read, but it's harder to experience it, is what I would say. And so I'm sorry that's hard to read, but yeah.
And to survive it.
And to survive it, yeah, absolutely.
And one of the things we talk about too is, we have these conversations about a topic like being sexually assaulted by your older brother, whatever you want to call it, rape, sexual assault, and this went on for years. One of the things we've talked about is, you've told me that when you have a conversation with someone about this, people tend to shut down and just sort of like, whoa, why do you think that is?
There's a thing that they don't want to hear the details, and I get it, but the problem with that is it keeps the shame going. So every time I tell someone that I'm a survivor of incest and they go, ugh, that makes me feel like something's wrong with me.
Like this, we don't have to talk about it. No, you're writing about it, we're talking about it, we have to talk about it.
And that's the part of the purpose of the book. It's like, I'm tired of not talking about this. I'm tired of living with this shame, and I'm tired of meeting so many other survivors who also live with this shame.
What message do you want to send those who are suffering in silence like you were?
My idea is my ultimate reader is that 19-year-old girl who's out there just not knowing what's hit them, not knowing that what they've experienced is not okay, and to let them know that they can not only survive, but they could thrive. I should have such a small life, David. I should be an alcoholic, or I should be on drugs, or I should for sure be in an abusive marriage, or I should be dead from suicide. But something in me just was driven, and I married the right guy, and who has supported me incredibly through all these years. And I really hope it will help people who've, not just 19-year-olds, but anybody, because people repress memories for decades. So if there's a 65-year-old out there that needs to hear this story, then I hope that can be helpful for them. Hi!
straight ahead on this KGW Talk About It special.
We just always center the conversation around we want to make sure we're not harming each other.
Experts weigh in on how you can help empower young people and potentially prevent abuse from happening in the first place. When Talk About It continues right after this.
In one group, we can have some youth who've realized they've experienced this type of violence in a relationship, from like parents, from even friendships, and we oftentimes also have youth who realize, I've been doing these things.
The most important piece is creating a safe space. You can't do any kind of healing if you don't feel safe.
Well, that is Dr. Anna Hildy, a youth psychiatrist with the Tribes of Grand Ronde who works with trauma survivors, along with Tanika Cisco with the YWCA Clark County, who runs programs in local schools aimed at preventing sexual abuse and domestic violence. Both join me, along with author Heidi Yewman, to reflect on Heidi's journey and how they and we can talk about it to help empower others. So I want to start by talking about sibling sexual abuse, also known as incest. Heidi, one of the things you say is when you talk about your story, people tend to lean out rather than in. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I don't know. There's like an ick about it. And I do a lot of work around gun violence prevention, and people tell their stories about surviving being shot, and I see people lean into that. I don't see that when I tell somebody over, even friends over dinner, about my story of incest. There's a leaning back, and they don't want to know more. They don't have questions. And so I don't really know what it's about, other than that it creates more shame within myself.
What do they say? Do they say, do we have to talk about this? Are you comfortable talking? What do they say?
No, it's just like silence.
Huh.
And it's like awkward, and then it's like, can we move on to another subject? And I can just feel it.
What would be a better response? What would you like to hear when you bring this up?
I would love to hear a simple, I'm so sorry that happened to you, and maybe even a sharing of, like, I had a neighbor that happened to, or those kind of sharing moments, yeah.
So Tanika, you work with middle and high school students doing education and prevention work about domestic violence, sexual assault. How do you talk to young people, kids and teens, about topics like this?
Yeah, it's really difficult. Obviously, it's a topic that you mentioned that a lot of people don't want to talk about because there's this shame or this not wanting to accept that someone could cause that level of harm to someone else. It's really difficult for us as humans to think that that's happening. So we are really open and set kind of like guidelines. How are we going to have this conversation? What happens if someone is triggered and needs to take a step back? And then we just always center the conversation around we want to make sure we're not harming each other as humans in our friendships, our relationships, our family relationships, whatever it may be. And we take the conversation from there.
And we're going to talk about that quite a bit. I want to share some statistics around child sexual abuse because I think they'd be helpful here. So first of all, research shows 1 in 9 girls, also 1 in 20 boys under the age of 18 experience sexual abuse or assault. That's a staggering number. And then there's this. 93% of sexual abuse victims under 18 know their abuser. If we break it down, 59% of perpetrators are an acquaintance, 34% a family member, and 7% a stranger, just 7%. Anna, talk to me about what happens from your perspective as a psychiatrist when the perpetrator is a family member.
There's a power differential, right? So someone has more power than the individual. So power and control, but it's also within your family. And so
there's this trust element.
Yeah, like this is someone that you know, like shouldn't be doing this to you, right? This is, even if it's a sibling, if it's a parent, it's confusing, right? Like for a young person, like, and a lot of times they turn it internally, and it's like, well, what did I do wrong? I'm the bad one, and that feeds into the perpetration, right?
Heidi, does this resonate with you?
Yeah, it really resonates with me. I continue in my life today that whenever something goes wrong in a relationship or with me, it's my fault. That's my default every single time. Is it's something that I've done, something that's wrong with me, And I recognize now that that started so early.
I think there's one thing we can all agree on here. Abuse is never the fault of the survivor. Never, 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 right? We'd say that over and over and over again. I want to talk about sort of not the effects we've talked about or we've seen your story and the effects of trauma as a child, but also as an adult. The long-term impacts of child sexual abuse. So we have some graphics here. Survivors are 4 times more likely to develop symptoms of drug abuse, 3 times more likely to experience a major depressive episode as adults, and 4 times more likely to experience PTSD as adults. Heidi, do these ring true? What kind of long-term impacts have you experienced here?
Yeah, the trauma of it continues in so many ways. It shows up in my intimate life with my husband, for sure. It shows up there, and it shows up in my relationships with other people. So, for instance, I really don't trust people in relationships, in work relationships, those kinds of things.
And that's where you start, from a position of not trusting people.
Yes, and I assume that they're going to at some point be tired of me, get sick of me, not like me, not want to work with me. And I'm always just waiting for that thing to happen.
Well, Tanika, and this explains why the prevention work that you do is so critical. Can you talk a little bit about youth victimizing other youth, whether it's physical, emotional, sexual, what you see and where you think that behavior comes from?
Yeah, we in our groups oftentimes are having these conversations, talking about violence, talking about sexual assault, teen dating violence, domestic violence. And in one group, we can have some youth who realize they've experienced this type of violence in a relationship, from like parents, from even friendships. And we oftentimes also have youth who realize, I've been doing these things to my friends or to my partner. And so we really try to center the conversation around, like, these are things that we've learned. We've learned them from the media, we've learned them from our families, we've learned them from society, that it's okay to treat people this way, that it's normal to treat people this way. And if nobody has ever told them that's not okay, there's something different that we should be working on or striving towards, they don't know any better. So we try to hold that space of, when they're coming to these realizations, that it's really important that we're not demonizing these youth at the same time.
The most important piece is creating a safe space. So you can't do any kind of healing if you don't feel safe. And for most people, they've often not felt safe in any space, and particularly in their home, right? Where you should feel safe all the time. Often, as we talked about, there's this inequity in power and control. And so for me, part of healing is being able to give this person some control, some say, right? That they have agency. And it's really important that that I allow them to lead.
Coming up, breaking the cycle.
I didn't want to have to support my kids in their trauma from my trauma.
It's going to take all of us to do the work together.
How it's possible to pass down resilience instead of trauma from one generation to the next, when this special edition of KGW Talk About It continues.
I think that's probably one of your biggest achievements. I mean, the fact that you broke the chain is remarkable. That often doesn't happen, right?
That's Dave Yewman, Heidi's husband, reflecting on an accomplishment we touched on earlier in Heidi's story: breaking the cycle by raising 2 healthy adult children who, by their parents' accounts, are simply thriving. And you know, this brings up the whole concept of intergenerational trauma, the idea that trauma survivors often pass along the effects to maybe kids or grandkids, leaving them more susceptible to things like depression and anxiety. Take a listen. So, intergenerational trauma, here is one example of the research around this. The Nurses' Health Study found children of women who'd experienced physical, sexual, or verbal abuse as children were 1.7 times more likely to experience depression and 2.5 times more likely to develop chronic depression. That's just one example. Tanika, does this line up with what you see?
Yes, absolutely. We often see that youth who grow up in families where they've experienced violence or violence is happening kind of have some of those things that you had mentioned, but also can learn that, like, violence is normal. So either learn that like the behaviors that I have exhibited are okay to continue harming others, or the opposite. We see that like people are harming me and that's okay, and continue and carry those on into their adult relationships.
Heidi, you and your husband Dave have raised 2 healthy adult children. You have broken the cycle. How did you break that cycle?
So I basically parented in the way that I wished I had been parented. So I was paying attention. It was really important to me that my kids felt smart and that they were supported all the time in the activities they were doing and being cheerleaded and valued.
So there's also this idea of maybe passing down resilience instead of the trauma itself. And I think that's maybe part of what you're doing, Heidi, by telling your story and sharing it publicly. I'm curious to know, when did you approach this with your kids and what did you tell them?
I was very concerned even before I had kids of how I was going to tell my kids and when. And I had heard another woman who had experienced incest, and she gave the advice to tell them when they're in college, and I went for that. And I thought it was the correct advice, waiting until they were old enough where they could understand it in a more global way. And then their feelings didn't have to be my feelings. So they had enough separation emotionally from me. So they could have their own feelings and their experience. Because what I didn't want to do is I didn't want to have to support my kids in their trauma from my trauma.
I want to get a final thought from each of you. What is one thing you want someone watching to take away from this conversation? Anna?
I think for any young person that's watching this, hopefully a recognition of what abuse can look like, and then that there are people that you can reach out to.
There's help out there. There's resources.
Yes.
You're not alone at the end of the day.
Exactly.
It's not your fault.
Exactly.
It's going to take all of us to do the work together to create this world where we don't accept violence as a normal thing.
It's a community effort, and it starts with each of us. Heidi, what about you? A final thought?
I think there's a lot of people in here watching this right now, and they are young and they are not knowing what to do, or they're an adult and they have suppressed the memories for years, which is very common, and maybe just starting to remember. And I think that they need to know that no matter when or how they deal with it, that there is help there. I'm telling everybody right now, you're not alone.
And my thanks to Dr. Anna Hildy, Tanika Sisko, and most of all, Heidi Yewman, for having the strength and spirit to write and talk about her story. Her memoir is called Dumb Girl. And as Heidi found out later in life, it turns out being dumb, I have that in quotes, became her superpower. Check out the book to find out how. And check out a list of recommended resources. We have those up along with an extended Q&A with Heidi right now at kgw.com. On behalf of all of us at KGW, I'm David Mulco, reminding you once again that there is always strength, growth, and resilience when we have the courage to talk about it.